There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and to another episode of Zooming In, which is a series fairly new on my channel where I engage with bookish social media luminaries the world over about reacting to bouncing off bookish articles, literary articles published online. And I am delighted to welcome for her debut appearance, and hopefully not her last, on my channel and on this series, a bookish social media luminary called Nora, joining us from Dublin. Hello, Nora.
Hi, Shawn. How are you? Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun.
It's
Really excited about this chat today.
It's so lovely to meet you. Nora came onto my radar quite recently because she is the founder of a readathon or themed read along in September called Spinster September. And I believe it was the first one this year. Is that right, Nora?
Yeah, I know September is my birthday month, and I don't know if you do that, but every birthday I'm trying to make like fun plans around my reading and books I've wanted to read and all that. And this year I decided I wanted to read only about spinsters, which is one of my favorite topics in literature. And I posted on Instagram, and I remember thinking this is so going to be a tumbleweed moment. And I said, does anyone want to join me in reading about spinsters this month? And it totally took off. Yeah.
It really did. So I didn't find out about it until it was too late. My bibliographical dance card was full, but I'm looking forward to taking part next year. Are you going to do it next year?
Yeah. I mean,
Great.
it has to happen. Yeah. And I've got so many recommendations that, I need to, I could fill a few Septembers with all the recommendations that I got this year.
And Nora, your Instagram ID is Pear Jelly. Is there a story?
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to disappoint. There's no story. I just like the way it sounded, and also I felt like fruit jelly are so like old fashioned, and I think my reading is kind of old fashioned in a way. So I just like the sound of it and the sort of visual it evoked.
I think it's lovely. So Nora and I are here to talk about an article called "The Ritual of Rearranging Your Books." And that was written by Molly Templeton on the website Tor.com. This is the second article that I've read that was published there. Tor.com is actually a publisher of sci-fi and fantasy, but they also have these articles, and they're wonderful. So this one is, if it's not already obvious, about arranging and rearranging your library. And that's, I think, always a rich topic for two bookworms to discuss. So, Nora, what did you make of this article?
When you sent it to me, I was like, yes, I want to talk about this, because rearranging my books is something I do monthly, because I pick TBRs. And then at the end of the year, I've got like a big sort out. So yeah, reading Molly Templeton's words really resonated with me in the way she reconnected with her books. Where I'm different, I think, is that my collection is not as extensive. So maybe there's not as emotional as she would describe. The way she finds, books that would remind her of places and stuff. It's not something maybe in my collection that I find yet. I mean, I'm an expat. I've been living in Dublin for 15 years now. So most of my childhood books and, young adult books are still in Belgium. So, but it's always fun when I go back at my mom's and reconnect with those books.
How do you organize your books? If you do at all, how do you arrange your books?
So I don't know if you can see behind me,
Yes.
these there's two shelves up here. These are my TBR books, and I organize them by seasons. So when I do my TBRs each month, I know from which season to pick. And then
can you say a little more about that? Because that's very interesting. When you say that you organize them by season, do you mean that you plan which books you're going to read by the season or something?
Yeah, so what I do, wait, let me pick a couple here. So here are some of my autumn books. So that's an obvious one, September. That's a neat, by title, I would do it, but also by genre. You see here, I've got My Cousin Rachel. It's like a gothic-y book, so I think those kind of books suits the autumn-winter seasons. Then A Pin to See the Peep Show, again, is about a murderess, I think. I hope I'm not wrong. And I think that suits the autumn-winter season. So you see, it's like a mix of genre title. And if I can't find, here's another one, a good one for September, Fortnight in September by Archie Sheriff. And if I can't find, according to the title, the genre, sometimes I would read the first few pages, and often writers would set up the scene and talk about flowers or weather and stuff, and then I would put it in the appropriate season. And then I've got here, oh no, you can't see up there, there's like season neutral books that I can't put anywhere.
So you just slot those in wherever there's space per season by
exactly
season.
Yeah, and then under there's a second bookshelf, and those are my red books, and those are classified with countries mainly. So you have Asian, UK, that's most of UK, then America, then sort of miscellaneous, and Ireland, and the last shelves is nonfiction with poetry, anthology, essays, biography, autobiographies. So yeah, that's just
I'm very curious, which section is the biggest?
UK.
The UK. And do you have a spinster section?
Not yet, no, but I'm sure it'll come. Actually, this year, I think this is probably going to change, because last month was my birthday and I had like a big haul of books coming in, and my shelves are at maximum capacity. So I need to buy a new shelf. So I might make a little spinster corner.
You might, by the time you're done with a few more years of Spinster September, you might need a spinster shelf, Nora.
I'd love that. That would be lovely.
Now, I'm going to tell you something that might shock you. I don't think I told you this in advance. I do not organize my books. I do not arrange my books at all. So they are willy-nilly mixed together, read books, unread books. There's no alphabetical organization, nothing by country. I am even uncomfortable to put two books by the same author together.
Is there a reason for that?
It's a replica of my scattered brains, Nora.
Is it like an organized chaos where you have a visual where each book is, or is it like complete, like, chaos where you don't know where things are?
Eventually, the longer I stay in one place without moving, the more likely it is that eventually I will just instinctively know where books are. And I would say maybe 30 to 40% of the books that I go looking for, I have a really pretty good idea of which shelf it's on, just because I've been staring at that shelf because it's right beside the TV, or you know what I mean? Like I get a sense of where certain books are. But because I'm a booktuber, I'm always pulling books off the shelf to show them in a video, and then I almost adamantly refuse to put them back where they were. So things are always getting mixed up. So if there is a method in my madness, it is that I love hunting through my bookshelves to find books. That's something that she talks about in this article in a different kind of context that I very much relate to. It takes me a long time to find a book on my shelf because I'm so distracted by the books that I'm not looking for, that I'm looking at as I'm browsing, looking for the book that I want. And I just find that process fascinating. If everything was really beautifully arranged and organized, I wouldn't have that delightful time reacquainting myself with books that are all mixed up all over the place. But I know some of my followers are librarians who commented when I first talked about this, when I first came out of the closet as somebody who does not organize their library at all and prides themselves on not knowing where anything is, that this librarian viewer said that I was giving her nightmares. She couldn't believe it.
I mean, if it works for you, it's just I feel like maybe you're making life a bit harder being a booktuber and all that. Like, I mean, I see why you would enjoy going through memory lane every time, but then it would make your work harder.
I have. I probably exaggerated a bit when I said that it's not at all organized. One of my quote unquote guilty pleasures is I like reading biographies of the British royal family, and I have those all together in one place. So for whatever reason, that's an exception that those are all in one shelf. And I haven't done this yet since I moved. I lived in Tokyo for many years, and I had a Barbara Pym shelf there where all of her novels and all of the biographies and literary criticism I had, they were all together. So that was another exception. And going farther back into my past, I remember when I lived in Edmonton, and at that time, because I wasn't doing a lot of reading, but I was still a compulsive book acquirer. I kept buying books, bringing books into the house, but I only read about a dozen books a year. That it was embarrassing when people would come over for a visit and they'd say, "Oh, did you like this? Did you like that?" And I said, "Oh, I haven't read it, haven't read it, haven't read it." So finally, I moved books that I had read into the shelves on the living room so that at least if people asked me about them, I had read them. So that's something else I have done. I don't have a shelf like that now. And I have also there's a lot of exceptions here. So my blanket statement was way too blankety. I have had shelves with my favorite books, favorite reads of all time, all grouped together. And the top shelf right behind my head, I'll move my head out of the way. And going on to the shelf just below it, I keep the books in chronological order that I've read in the current year,
I do that
so
too.
that
I've got
I can pull them out easily because they're all the ones that I've recently read are there together. And then
mm,
that gets all mushed up and mixed up with everything else when it's time for the next year.
yeah, I've
So
got
it's a
a
bit of a
shelf as well
mishmash.
for current year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, have you always been like that, or is it something to do with the fact that you've traveled around and, put yourself at different places? Is it a reflection of your mind where you think maybe I won't be here for a long time, um, or is just the way your mind works?
Or doesn't work. I was going to say it's evolved, but then probably what I should say is it's devolved over time. And that could be because I've moved around a lot in my adult life. Absolutely. Because I think when I had a library as a kid, they were all alphabetical by author, and I actually had a lending library. I was such a little geek. I show this in several of these zooming in videos. I actually had a rubber
Your
stamp when I was a
stamp.
kid.
Oh, I love
Sean
your
Mooney.
stamp.
Yeah. So here's a question for you. Are you familiar with Thomas? His blog is hogglestock.com, and he was a co-host of the Readers podcast years ago. Does that
I've
name ring a
heard
bell?
I've heard his name, but
He's
I haven't read his words yet. Mm.
I just remember him talking a lot on his blog and in the podcast about the work involved in organizing the library, especially I think he organized them maybe solely alphabetically, or he might have been by country and then alphabetical. But the amount of work that went into moving things around to make room for new books, like it was such a persnickety and labor intensive process to clear space for a whole bunch of more authors with the letter W. Their surname began with W because that shelf was jam packed, and then every shelf had to be adjusted through the whole library. And I don't have to do any of that. Do you find that an arduous process, keeping everything organized, physically
Yeah,
manipulating?
yeah, for sure. I mean, especially in the red section, because there's so little place how to put them horizontally already, so that's kind of difficult to access. And now, since I started Instagram this year, I've got like quite regularly posts where I do like with a theme, like what to read on St. Patrick's Day, what to read for this and that occasion. So I pull stuff off my shelf all the time, and more often than not, there's like stacks of books just around my bookshelves because I just can't be bothered putting them back in. And I think, yeah, a new shelf will be like really needed next year. And especially, I didn't mention, but a lot of those books are also my partners. So I mean, when we moved in together, we just wanted, our books together. And now it's getting a bit difficult. I've not always been like a book collector. It's something that is actually quite recent for me. I've always mostly use libraries and, and then get stuff from the charity shop and then give them back. And I wasn't really like that precious about books. But during the pandemic, I think I had like 20 books on my TBR, and I started panicking that it wasn't enough to get through lockdowns. And as soon as the lockdowns lifted, I just went mad on the buying books front. I just needed those books, and I started appreciating, the object and the editions and the covers and the feel. So my collection has grown exponentially in the past few years. It hasn't always been like that.
Do you envision changing your organizational system at any point in the future? And have you already started thinking about how you might change it up?
Ideally, and that's the way my bookshelves were when I was a kid. I really like putting books in the same editions together and vertically. That's the one I would like to do ideally. But because of these shelves and the compromise I have to make, I thought maybe countries were working better, and also the size, and I think it might evolve, especially with the fact that I have to think about Instagram posts and season. Maybe I should do a seasonal rearrangement with my read books, because that's something I talk a lot on Instagram, seasonal reading. So that would make sense if I was changing that around.
You think that you will bring your childhood books over to Ireland at any point?
That's a tricky question. So I'm still a renter, because Dublin is stuck in a rental crisis at the minute, or housing crisis generally. So it's very much tied up to the possibility of me buying a place. So as long as it's not possible, I can't see myself like carting all my books with me. Yeah, but I actually have a couple here. I don't know if you're interested to see them. I picked a few books that, considering that the article was about emotional connection with books. I put a couple aside for you. So this one of the books I brought from Belgium. So it's Tove Jansson, the Moumine books, which I loved as a kid, and it's an old, you can see, an old edition.
That's lovely.
And this one has no sentimental value, but this is the oldest book on my TBR shelf. And again, I brought back from Belgium by Pouchkine. It's not written that way in English for some reason.
Oh, the Russian Pouchkine. Okay.
I haven't read yet. I thought I was going to read it, but I haven't read it yet. And another book I kind of feel sentimental towards is this one, Lewis Carroll.
Aha. His Adventures in Wonderland.
Yeah, because I bought it when I did a language program in England. When I was 19, I spent the summer in Bristol, and we visited Oxford then, and it was like one of the best summers of my life. So whenever I see that spine, it just makes me smile. I don't know if it's with your non-organization, if that's something you do, just looking at spines and remembering places where
Oh, absolutely. And that's why when I go hunting for a particular book, it usually takes me an hour, because I'm engaged in exactly that kind of reminiscing and rediscovery and nostalgic, yes, meandering. So absolutely.
You know what's pressing me about your organization is the fact that you mix read and unread. Like, how do you remember all your unread books? Like, are there...
You mean, how do I remember what I have that I haven't read?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I have a pretty good memory about that. I've never accidentally bought the same book twice. I'm sure that day is coming as my library continues to grow, but it's never happened to me. Maybe more likely is situations where I am starting to forget whether I have a book, or did I end up keeping that book when I left Tokyo, or did I bring it to Canada? Did I get rid of it because I knew I'd never read it, or I would never read it again? I'm starting to forget those kinds of things. but not if I just bought it and it's on my shelf and I haven't read it yet, don't think I would ever forget that.
My question was more to do with, you know, when it's time for you to pick your TBR or what you're going to read next, are there books that you just forgot about? They're just like hiding in your shelves and that they will never get read because they're sort of in between your read books?
No, but that's a great question. The way that I will answer it is, for me, it's not a matter of forgetting about books, but simply not getting to books because my reading is not seasonal like yours, but my reading is often very much affected by what is the booktube readathon for this month. For example, in October, it's Victober. It's all Victorian reading. And now Spinster September is going to be forevermore. It's going to be, on my calendar. And the Asian readathon and the Indigenous readathon. And there's a whole bunch of books that don't fit into any of those. And it's not that I forget that I have them, but it's really difficult to fit them in during a reading year. So this year I pulled a half dozen or so of them off my shelf and made a video, which the concept, I stole the concept from another much more famous booktuber. If I haven't read these books by the end of the year, I have to unhaul them because they've been collecting dust.
1 year?
Gave myself 1 year to read these 6 books that don't fit into any readathon that I just have to read because I want to read them. And I've read about 4 out of the 6, so I got 2 more, and that's gone well. And I'm going to keep doing that to get to the ones that just don't fit into the way that I pattern my reading year.
Well, maybe that's a way you should put your order your shelves by readathon.
This is really stressing you out that my shelves are really disordered, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm such a Virgo. I'm just looking right now at your shelves. I just want to rearrange.
You remind me of my former best friend. This is not why we're no longer friends, but my former best friend, we never, especially when we didn't live in the same city and he would come to visit. If I had to go out for any reason, I would come home and he would have cleaned my place because I'm a pretty messy guy, and rearranged the furniture. And when I was younger, I loved it because I didn't have a sense of what I liked. But the older I got, the more I hated it. That he would just take it upon himself. Yeah. So I would, as soon as he would go home, I'd put everything back the way it was. But Nora, I think I'd be willing to risk it. I'll fly you over.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens. We'll make a video about it.
Yeah, I promise I wouldn't touch your organization organization, but I would love to have a little nosy around your shelves. That's for sure.
I would let you be like those TV shows where they bring in what is the Japanese one? What is she?
Mary Kondo?
Mary Kondo, that's right. You can come over and Nora eyes my library.
It would just be me reading on the floor, surrounded by stacks of books, and yeah.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to say. Thankfully, luckily for me, the video camera is pointing this way, so you cannot see the stacks of books all on the floor and on all the chairs all the way around me. So yes, half my library is down on the floor. Nora, this has been an absolute delight. Will you come back?
Yeah, for sure. If you'll have me, I'll come back anytime.
So fun. Thank you so much.